Alright guys, strap yourselves in. I am going to do my best to get my thoughts out on this new Travis Scott record, hopefully in a way that makes any sense. Welcome back to On the Flip Side. My name is Adam Shellwalker, your host, and today we're checking out this new Travis Scott record, Utopia. I'm not super into trap rap, that's probably pretty obvious, but dang it, I'm listening to this thing, and I'm enjoying a good chunk of what's here. Some of this stuff doesn't land as well for me, but just a little heads up before I dig too deeply into this that I'm not here to just rip on this record. Actually, I'm liking it a lot more than I was expecting, but just a little note for you guys, this genre is absolutely not my forte. Houston trap rapper Travis Scott is back. The last album of his I paid any attention to was Astroworld, basically, frankly, because Sicko Mode was inescapable for like a year after that dropped. Not to shit on that track or anything, it's a good one, overplayed for sure, but good. I do think with the attention Travis Scott has been getting over the past few years, positive or negative attention aside, I assumed whatever record he dropped next was going to probably be a bit overindulgent, maybe a bit of a creative deviation, sort of like a melt my eyes, see your future situation, and we kind of get that here. Say what you will about Travis Scott as a person, I don't really care to get into the details of every artist's scandals or whatever. The whole Astroworld crowd crush thing sucked, but we're here now. In this current moment, we've got Utopia, an album that I do think wrestles with itself a bit. I think this record knows what it wants to be. It's a much darker record tonally. There's some very obvious influence on this thing production-wise that fits right in line with some of the later Kanye West projects. I think Travis Scott is really trying to solidify himself beyond just Astroworld as a mainstay rapper. I mean, there are some people who do fall off of this train. The quality of writing between releases can swing really dramatically, and I think that's one of the reasons it's been a good few years since we've heard from Travis Scott. I think some of the more recent features he's done have been a little bit phoned in because I think he was probably saving some of the better material for this record particularly. That is not to say that the album is without its faults, but it is clearly a more focused effort than even Astroworld was. My gripes with this album tend to come down to mostly just nitpicking. Some tracks have a tendency to drag until there's a beat switch up that at some times sounds undeserved, or a song may just not really have the payoff you would expect on some of the longer-winded moments. And yes, this is a pretty long record. It's like 19 tracks, a little over 70 minutes, which I personally find a bit annoying, but that's just because I think this record does get a little bit self-indulgent at points, and there's some stuff in here that maybe could have been tightened up a bit. As far as what is really good here are the features, like really good, which Travis is utilizing exactly how you should. Every feature feels like a natural inclusion and extension of the artist being used here in the track. It's not like he's trying to force Beyonce or 21 Savage into some uncomfortable performance. They are doing what they are good at, and it lands, and I really appreciate the willingness and awareness that it must have taken to just kind of let these people do their things. Hyena kicks off the record with this a cappella vocal work that I imagine is probably a sample. That leads into some really awesome drum work, really killer beat on this one. Also a big fan of the Maggot Brain sample on the lead out for this track. I think it's a pretty good indicator of where Travis is wanting to go with this thing. A lot more introspective, a bit darker. Thank God keeps things rolling with a slower intro. I'm into the weird beat here. There's these sort of chiming, almost vibraphone-like patches here that are really cool. Mid-track, there's a pretty solid switch up with some nice string sampling. Modern Jam has one of my favorite beats on the record. It's very aptly modern, very forward-thinking, like a kind of industrial-ish drum loop. The flow here is very 90s hip-hop a la The Roots. Loving the breaks in the track that kind of hype things up. They definitely are a bit corny, but it's done just tastefully enough that I give it a pass. It's kind of like it's almost too goofy, but it's not 2009 goofy. Also really love some of the vocal weirdness toward the end of the track. My Eyes is one of the moments where I think the album trips over itself with maybe wanting to be taken a little bit too seriously. I think the beat switch up on this one is cool, but it comes after a really long-winded and unflattering intro. I mean, the last like 2 minutes of this track should have just been the track, because it's pretty great after the intro bit that I just am not really into. God's Country is a shortcut, not a huge fan of this one. It's a little bit of a reversal for this album after so much of what led into this track was so forward-thinking. The beat here is really sterile, some of the lines are kind of weak, and I'm really not into the la 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 sample here that's used as a main part of the beat. Sirens is a better cut than the last track with these really choppy bass 808s that I'm into. Still not sure how I feel about some of the change-ups mid-song. They do break up the flow a bit, and it's okay, but I'm not the biggest fan of that. The end of this track has almost this like EDM style break that you would kind of think would lead to some break of tension, but it sort of just ends. Meltdown has kind of an okay flow. This one ends up being a little on the nose lyric-wise, but I don't have nearly enough melanin to properly dig into this without sounding like a total asshole, so I'm kind of just gonna let it be. It's a decent track, though I do like the TIE Fighter blaster samples they use in this song. Unexpected, but it works really well. Nice choice on that. Fiend has some of my favorite synth work on the album for the beat. There's this like wall of, I don't know, down-pitched strings that I think is really solid. Lots of modulating that weaves between bars. It's a banger for sure. Del Resto Echoes, again, really pushes the creativity up a notch with an excellent Beyonce feature. This track also includes Bon Iver. It's by far one of the best cuts on the record. Even as someone who's not super into trap, this track is fantastic. I know, again, feels like a bit of a regression, again, after the last track, but I think that was a particularly high bar, so I'm kind of not surprised. This one's alright, probably not one I'd revisit too often. Utopia Twins has some sick features from Rob 49 and 21 Savage, both of which bring some very, very needed energy to this song. I mean, they're really belting out some of these lines. Keeps things really fresh. I'm into it. Circus Maximus features Swa Lee and The Weeknd killer beat, really reminiscent of Black Skinhead by Kanye. Probably just a bit of a nod. The Weeknd feature here specifically is damn good and really makes a lot of the song. Again, a lot of nods from Travis Scott to Kanye on this thing. I mean, it's probably mostly coincidental, but he really sounds like he's going for that here, which is okay. Killer track. Paracel starts with a Dave Chappelle feature that I kinda love. Wasn't expecting it, but I'm into it. The rest of the track is decent, mellow, really brooding. It is one of the quieter moments on the album that feels like it's not just trying to kind of be overindulgent. I like it. Schizo is the longest track here, over 6 minutes long. It features Young Thug. Not the biggest fan of this one. This is probably one of the biggest offenders on the album of a track that kind of just keeps going when it really should have just wrapped things up. Really similar to My Eyes, where the last couple of minutes are a lot more engaging than the fairly long-winded intro. Lost Forever is one of the better slow tracks here. I really like how mellow the production work is here. I'd almost like to hear just an instrumental version of this song. Love is a bit more dancey. Definitely feels like a bit of fan work on this one. Like, this track is just this crazy multifaceted bop that really just rips, really channels a lot of more modern, dare I say, reggaeton for the beat, if only for a moment. This one's killer. K-pop pairs pretty well with the last track. Again, total club banger, lots of swelling bass hits. Again, bit of Latin influence on this one. I do think it's probably the weaker of the pair, but it's still a good cut. Telekinesis has this almost vaporwave-like style. Like, take the lyrics out and it's like a Macintosh Plus track. This one has a pretty exceptional feature from SZA, but that's about where my excitement ends. A lot of this song is very long-winded. Till further notice, as a final cut is solid, but as a closing song, it's a bit of a credits roll kind of moment, but without a resolution that feels particularly worthwhile. And that's really one of my main gripes with this record. There's some great hard-hitting tracks here, but things just tend to kind of fizzle out when you want more. So I came away from this thing with a much more positive experience than I was expecting, but I do think there was some fat here that really could have been trimmed. Utopia is worth a good few listens. There's certainly playlist songs on this thing too, but I'm thinking it's pretty far from all killer, no filler. So I'm thinking Utopia is a pretty solid 7. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of this album in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe. Check out my Instagram, my Reverb, and my Depop. Links to all of those are in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching again, and we'll see you on the flip side.